Title: The Day the Handcuffs Clicked on Justice. Reagan International Airport was a churn of movement that Friday afternoon. The intercom cracked with multilingual flight announcements, echoing off the marble floors like background percussion to a symphony of suitcase wheels, fast food scents, and chattering voices. Gate C-19 was crowded with weary travelers, some business-suited, others in travel-stretched sweats, all inching toward the end of a long week. Near the front of the priority boarding line stood a woman in her late 40s, calm, dignified, dressed in tailored charcoal slacks and a powder blue blouse. Her posture was straight, her energy quiet but commanding. Her name was Vanessa Colton, and she clutched a slim tablet in one hand, reviewing case summaries from a federal conference she had just closed as keynote speaker. Though she looked like any well-organized professional returning from work travel, Vanessa Colton was far from ordinary. She was the chief judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the 10th Circuit, one of the most powerful women in the federal judiciary. But here, in this terminal, she was anonymous. And that, she preferred. 2 rows behind her stood Margaret Whitmore, a 63-year-old white woman dressed in a Chanel jacket and pearls, her voice sharp and her expression sharper. Margaret shifted impatiently, checking her Rolex every 30 seconds and glancing at Vanessa with disapproval that bordered on disgust. To her, seeing a black woman, alone, composed, clearly in business class, was an offense to her sensibilities. Her mouth curled with disdain. "She doesn't belong here," Margaret whispered loudly to her companion, loud enough for the adjacent passengers to hear. "The world's upside down. Anyone can buy a ticket these days, apparently." The words hung in the air, venomous and intentional. Then, with theatrical indignation, Margaret marched toward the gate attendant. "Excuse me," she snapped, voice syrupy with fake politeness. "I'm extremely uncomfortable. That woman," she pointed directly at Vanessa, "keeps watching me. She's making me feel unsafe. I think you should check her credentials." The young gate agent blinked in confusion. "Ma'am, she's a verified business class passenger." She could have used fake ID. "You don't know. She's been staring at my back. Are you going to let this threat on the plane?" That accusation, baseless and rooted in prejudice, traveled like a spark to dry grass. Within moments, 2 airport officers patrolling nearby strolled over. Officer Dean Walters, a jaded white officer with 20 years on the force, squinted toward the gate. His partner, Officer Tyler Reed, younger, bulkier, and too eager for action, followed closely. Margaret's eyes lit up. "Officers. Thank God. That woman over there," she pointed again, "she makes me feel unsafe. I think she might be carrying something suspicious." Dean and Tyler looked at Vanessa. She stood motionless, still unaware she was now a suspect. The 2 officers exchanged glances. Dean's gaze hardened with unspoken bias, while Tyler cracked his knuckles, already stepping forward. They approached Vanessa with an air of authority that turned heads. The crowd shifted uneasily as the uniformed men cut a path to the businesswoman standing quietly. "Ma'am," Dean said, tone flat, "please step aside with us for a moment." Vanessa blinked but nodded. "Is something wrong? We received a report that you've been acting suspiciously. We need to ask you a few questions and see your ID." "Suspicious," she echoed, surprised. "I've been standing here reading briefs on a federal case." Tyler stepped in, voice harder. "We don't need commentary. Just your ID and boarding pass." Vanessa's expression remained composed. She reached into her bag and handed over her documents. "Vanessa Colton, here's my license and my business class ticket." Dean inspected them. "You're flying business class?" "I am." "What's your profession?" "That's not relevant." Dean's brow creased. "We'll decide what's relevant. Are these documents real?" A small silence passed before Vanessa responded, steel in her voice. "You're speaking to me in a manner rooted in assumption and bias. I've shown you valid documents. There's no cause for your questions. I respectfully ask for your names and badge numbers." Tyler leaned in. "You don't get to demand anything." Dean added, "This attitude won't get you on that plane." Vanessa's voice didn't rise, but it sharpened. "I'm a United States citizen. You are harassing me based on race, not behavior." The exchange was loud enough now for others to hear. The gate area quieted. Margaret Whitmore, still nearby, smirked and folded her arms. "Told you she was trouble." And then, without cause, Dean snapped. "You're resisting. That's enough. You're under arrest." "What?" Vanessa exclaimed. Tyler lunged. He grabbed her arm and twisted it behind her back, hard. The handcuffs clinked sharply as they were yanked into place. Passengers gasped. Some pulled out phones. Others turned away. No one helped. The respected judge was marched through the airport like a common criminal, wrists cuffed, head held high despite the burn of humiliation. She counted each step, memorizing each insult, each face, and most of all, each second of silence from those around her. Inside the airport holding station, the duty officer looked up as the two officers shoved her in. Disturbing the peace. Possible fraud, Dean barked. Here's her ID. The officer started entering data. Occupation? He asked. Vanessa stared at him, her eyes narrowing. I am Chief Judge Vanessa Colton, United States Court of Appeals. The silence that followed could have shattered glass. The duty officer looked up. You're, what? Dean's face drained of color. Tyler choked on his own breath. The ID suddenly made sense, and now, so did the horror of what they'd just done. I want these cuffs off immediately, she said, calm but commanding. The duty officer scrambled for the keys, unlocking the restraints. Deep red lines circled her wrists. Vanessa turned to the phone. Get your airport police chief. Now. And contact the U.S. Marshal's office. Also, my federal liaison. Why, yes, ma'am, the officer stammered, dialing furiously. Within 40 minutes, the holding station swelled with senior officials, the airport chief, deputy marshals, and even 2 aides from the federal court. The air pulsed with panic. Chief Colton recounted the incident in full, measured detail. No embellishment. Just facts. The airport police chief was livid, not at her, but at his men. Dean and Tyler stood mute, their faces pale, their future unraveling by the second. You're suspended immediately, the chief snapped. Turn in your gear. This isn't a reprimand. This is the beginning of a criminal investigation. Cameras were pulled. Witnesses gathered. Margaret Whitmore's identity was quickly retrieved. She hadn't left on her flight yet. She was detained at the gate, squawking loudly about privileges being trampled, until federal marshals placed her under official questioning. Dean and Tyler, meanwhile, faced more than job loss. The U.S. Attorney's Office filed charges, violation of civil rights under color of law, false arrest, racial discrimination, and official misconduct. Their trial began 3 months later. Vanessa Colton testified. So did passengers, the gate agent, and even a fellow officer who admitted the bias was obvious. Both men were found guilty and sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Margaret Whitmore, meanwhile, faced a $500,000 fine and narrowly avoided jail time through a negotiated plea. Her public disgrace cost her memberships, donations, and social standing. Judge Colton returned to the bench with renewed fire. She didn't break. She didn't cower. She reminded the world what real justice looked like, not with rage, but with integrity. With every ruling she passed after that day, she carried the memory of the metal cuffs not as a wound, but as a warning, and as a promise.